Why do small role changes create huge fantasy football impacts? Imagine a tiny shift in how often a player touches the ball or where they line up on the field. It might seem minor, but in fantasy football, these small changes can cause big results. Fantasy points come from specific actions like gaining yards, catching passes, scoring touchdowns, or getting targeted by the quarterback. When a player's role increases even slightly, such as gaining a few more targets or playing a few more snaps, their chances to score go up. Because fantasy scoring is based on these measurable actions, even small increases in involvement can lead to a big jump in points. Think about a wide receiver who normally gets 5 targets per game. If suddenly they get 7 targets because the team's game plan shifts, that extra target can turn into more receptions and yards. For running backs, gaining just a few more carries or being used more in goal line situations can mean the difference between a decent game and a huge one. These small role changes multiply because fantasy points are earned per touch and per yard. So a slight increase in touches can lead to a much higher fantasy score. Changes in how a team schemes plays also matter. If a team starts using more play-action passes or puts a player in motion more often, that player can become more efficient with each touch. This boosts their yards per attempt or reception, making even fewer touches more valuable. Coaches, decisions about who gets the ball and how often can turn a backup into a primary target or a secondary runner into a goal line specialist. These shifts can dramatically raise a player's fantasy ceiling. Another factor is where a player sits on the depth chart. Moving from a backup to a starter or from a secondary target to the main red zone option can mean more scoring opportunities. When a player is the primary option in key situations, their chances of scoring or gaining big yardage increase. This is why even small role changes can lead to outsized fantasy gains. Team factors also play a role. If a team has a strong offensive line and is efficient at moving the ball, a player's increased role becomes even more productive. Better blocking and overall offensive efficiency mean more yards and scoring chances for the player. Monitoring weekly updates and player profiles helps identify these subtle shifts. For example, if a player's snap count rises by a few plays or their target share increases slightly, that could be a sign they're about to have a big fantasy week. In short, because fantasy football rewards volume and efficiency, tiny role changes can turn into huge fantasy impacts. Keeping an eye on weekly updates, player analysis, and projections helps spot these opportunities early. Small adjustments in a player's involvement can be the difference between a quiet week and a breakout performance.